Francesco is gone. The words spread slowly, first whispered through tight lips in candlelit cathedrals, then shouted across the world in breaking news banners. Pope Francis is dead. The Vatican bell tolls, once then again, a slow and mournful rhythm that shakes the cobblestones beneath the feet of the faithful. A white succhetto rests atop crimson velvet. Empty chairs line the halls of the apostolic palace. Curtains are drawn. A stillness descends that even the Roman wind dares not disturb. But while some receive the news with trembling lips and tearful prayers, others feel something colder. A shiver, a shadow, a silence far older than grief. Because for them, this is not just the passing of a pope. This is the breaking of a seal. Buried deep within the labyrinth of the Vatican archives, behind layers of iron gates and forgotten Latin tomes, lies a prophecy, nearly 900 years old, a revelation that has haunted the church for centuries, a list, a sequence, a countdown, 112 names. And now, the last name has been crossed out. The man once known as Jorge Mario Bergoglio, humble, soft-spoken, Roman by blood, though born in Argentina, was the final name on that list. He was number 112, the one the prophecy called Peter the Roman. His death is not just the end of a life, it is the end of an era. The streets of Rome remain quiet, yet the air feels charged. Inside St. Peter's Basilica, tourists and pilgrims pause. They don't know why, but something ancient has shifted. Outside, the statues of saints stand unmoved, watching, waiting. Above, the Sistine Chapel ceiling seems to darken ever so slightly, Michelangelo's finger of God stretching toward man, now lost in shadow. And somewhere, in places far from light, others are watching too, not with sorrow, but with calculation. The shepherd is gone. The flock will scatter. And soon, another voice will rise. But whose voice will it be? The bell tolls again. 12 times now. And then, silence. And when these things have come to pass, the dreadful judge shall judge his people. The year was 1139. Rome, still rebuilding from centuries of war, whispered with dust and incense. Beneath the golden sky, a solitary figure moved quietly through the winding alleyways of the Eternal City. He was not a nobleman, nor a soldier, nor priest of great name. He was a monk, a pilgrim, an Irish bishop from Armagh. His name was Malachy. No one saw it happen. There was no flash of lightning, no shaking of the earth. Only a moment. A stillness. As he crossed the bridge toward Castel Sant'Angelo, his breath caught, his knees buckled, and the world around him faded into silence. Then he saw, not the cobblestones, not the Tiber. He saw time. It stretched out before him like a winding scroll, unraveling across centuries. He was no longer in Rome, not as it was. He stood before a long procession. Men dressed in robes, bearing rings and mitres one by one, walking into light, then into shadow. He didn't know their names, but he felt their weight. Each man carried not just a staff, but a burden. He saw betrayals, triumphs, schisms, scandals, saints and sinners, both crowned in white. The vision overwhelmed him. Each pope was marked by a single phrase, Latin inscriptions written across the sky like lightning on parchment, cryptic, symbolic, terrifying. From Celestine II to the end of days, he saw blood on altars, smoke in cathedrals, a church rising, a church falling, and at the end, he saw one more, a man, alone. His name shone brighter than all others, Peter the Roman. But behind him, there was nothing. No successor, no name, only flame. Malachy woke days later, trembling, soaked in sweat, his fingers still clenched around a broken quill. He wrote everything he could remember. 112 short Latin mottos, one for each pope to come. Not names, but codes, symbols. Some spoke of origins, others of character, some of fate. But the final line was no riddle. It was a warning. In the final persecution of the Holy Roman Church, Peter the Roman will reign, and the dreadful judge shall judge his people. The end. Then, silence. Malachy never spoke of the vision again. The prophecy was sealed and hidden, forgotten by many, dismissed by more. But time remembered. And now, after nearly 9 centuries, every phrase has come to pass. The final name was Pope Francis, and the vision of Malachy has become our reality. From the moment Malachy's final line was written, Peter the Roman, theologians, scholars, and mystics alike searched for him. Some expected a pope born in Rome itself. Others believed he would bear the literal name Peter. A few even imagined he would rebuild the church's glory, only for it to fall under his watch. But prophecy does not speak plainly. It speaks in symbols. Centuries passed, popes rose, popes fell. Some ruled for decades, others died within weeks. Each new pontiff was matched to a phrase in Malachy's list with chilling accuracy. Then, the world met Jorge Mario Bergoglio, a quiet cardinal from Buenos Aires, a man with no grand ambition, a man who rode the bus, cooked his own meals, and washed the feet of beggars. He was not born in Rome, but the blood in his veins told a different story. His parents, Italian immigrants from Piedmont, had fled fascist Italy during the war. They carried their heritage, their faith, their language, and their longing for peace to a new land. Though born in Argentina, Francis was Roman by ancestry. His roots were planted in the soil of the Eternal City. And when the white smoke finally rose in 2013, the world waited. What name would he choose? Most expected something traditional, Leo, Pius, John. But Bergoglio simply whispered, Francis. It was a shock. No pope had ever taken that name. No emperor, no warrior, no doctrinal titan. He chose the name of a saint, a barefoot man who gave up everything to embrace lepers and rebuild the church stone by stone. But hidden in that name was something more. Saint Francis of Assisi's true name? Giovanni di Pietro di Bernardone. John, son of Peter. Let that sink in. Pope Francis chose a name that, beneath its humility, was Peter in disguise. Peter by blood. Peter by name. Peter of Rome. He was the 112th Pope since Celestine II, exactly as Malachy had written. And he took upon himself the mantle of mercy, not monarchy. But the prophecy didn't end with his identity. It warned of the times. He shall shepherd his flock through great tribulation. And tribulation came, not in one storm, but in many. Scandal, division, disease. The church convulsed, and Francis remained. He didn't rise on a tide of adoration. He walked through fire. Whether they believed the prophecy or not, one thing became undeniable. Francis was Peter the Roman, and he was the last link in a chain that began 9 centuries ago. Now the chain is broken, and what lies beyond is unknown. In prophecy, the name Peter the Roman stood like a sealed riddle, stubborn, puzzling, impossible to force into the narrow mold of modern logic. But prophecy isn't made for logic. It's woven in symbols, revealed in hindsight, and only understood when the final piece is already in place. At first glance, Pope Francis didn't fit the part. He was not named Peter. He was not born in Rome. He didn't wear the red shoes of tradition or carry the imperial airs of pontiffs past. He was Jorge Mario Bergoglio, the son of a railway accountant and a housewife in the Flores neighborhood of Buenos Aires. A modest upbringing in a foreign land far from the Vatican's grandeur. But dig deeper, and the veil begins to lift. His father, Mario Jose Bergoglio, was born in the Piedmont region of northern Italy, a land shaped by vineyards, stone villages, and the old faith. It was the soil that had once nourished the Roman Empire, then the Catholic Church itself. His mother, Regina Maria Severi, also came from Italian lineage. Both had fled a country scarred by fascism and the Second World War. But they carried with them the language, the customs, and the blood of Rome. So while his passport bore the name of Argentina, his heritage bore the mark of Rome. He was Roman by bloodline, Roman by inheritance, Roman in ways the world had forgotten to look for. And then, the name. When the white smoke cleared and Bergoglio stood before the world, a simple question was asked. What name do you choose? He didn't hesitate. He didn't sift through the names of kings or warriors. He chose the name of the beggar, the radical, the saint of the margins, Francis. To many, it was a gesture of humility, but the roots of that name go deeper than most remember. Saint Francis of Assisi, the man who abandoned wealth to live in the slums, who kissed the diseased and rebuilt crumbling churches, was not born Francis. He was christened Giovanni di Pietro di Bernardone. John, son of Peter. Let the weight of that name settle. Francis was the son of Peter. He bore that name not outwardly but spiritually, tucked within layers of identity, humility, and hidden fulfillment. It was prophecy in disguise, and when the world looked again, truly looked, it all aligned. A man Roman in blood, named symbolically after Peter, who would shepherd the church through trial. Peter the Roman. It wasn't the name on his birth certificate. It was the identity wrapped in symbol. And it revealed itself only when the end had already begun. This was never about titles. It was about timing. He came not to reign, but to suffer. Not to build cathedrals, but to stand among the rubble. He was not Peter the builder. He was Peter the watchman, the one who would stay awake as the storm approached. And now, he is gone. And with his passing, the final line of Malachy's prophecy falls silent. The prophecy had spoken clearly. In the final persecution of the Holy Roman Church, Peter the Roman shall reign through great tribulations. This was never to be a peaceful papacy, not a reign crowned in laurel, but a pilgrimage through thorns. And from the moment Francis stepped onto the balcony of St. Peter's Basilica, the world sensed something different. He didn't wave like a ruler. He didn't bask in applause. He asked instead for silence, for prayer, for the people to bless him first. It was a quiet declaration. This would not be a papacy of power. It would be one of burden. And the burdens came quickly. Scandals erupted. Across continents, North America, Europe, Australia, voices rose from the shadows. Victims of abuse, silenced for decades, stepped into the light. They spoke with trembling lips and shattered memories, exposing rot buried deep in the foundations of the church. And Francis listened. He did not look away. He met with the abused. He wept beside them. He asked forgiveness, not just with words, but with his presence. But reform was not welcome in every corridor. Behind Vatican walls, resistance brewed. Whispers moved like smoke through marble halls. Old powers clung to secrecy, to tradition, to silence. Cardinals exchanged cold glances. Letters were leaked. Conferences became battlegrounds. Then came his most controversial words, spoken aboard a plane, when asked about homosexuality in the church. He responded calmly, "Who am I to judge?" The phrase ignited firestorms. Conservatives called it relativism. Traditionalists accused him of dismantling doctrine. He was compared to modernist heretics, even to Luther. Some within the College of Cardinals stopped hiding their disdain. They drafted manifestos. They demanded corrections. A few even whispered anti-pope. But Francis never retaliated. He remained unmoved, not by applause nor by outrage, because he understood something the world had forgotten. True reform always wounds before it heals. It disrupts before it restores. He saw the church not as a fortress, but a field hospital, broken, bleeding, desperate to be healed, not with judgment, but with mercy. And in that mercy, he refused to compromise. He opened doors to the divorced. He invited women to the synods. He insisted that the voice of the layperson mattered just as much as that of the bishop. He visited the slums of Manila, the camps of Lesbos, the forgotten corners of South America. Not for photo ops, not for politics, but because he believed the church should smell like the sheep. But all of this came at a price. The more he opened doors, the more wolves waited outside. His papacy, a fire he never tried to extinguish, only endure. And so the prophecy echoed again, louder now, through great tribulations. And through those tribulations, Francis did not fall. He walked, scarred, aged, gasping for breath, but forward still. This was no golden rain. It was a papacy of fire, and it burned not to destroy, but to purify. It was March 27th, 2020. Rome had never looked so empty. The cobbled streets leading to St. Peter's Square were deserted. No tourists, no pilgrims, no children chasing pigeons. Just silence and rain. It was the height of a global pandemic. COVID-19 had frozen life across continents. Doors were shut. Businesses collapsed. Churches locked their gates. The world watched from windows and screens, held hostage by an invisible enemy. Fear had become a universal language. And then, the image that stunned the world. Under a gray and weeping sky, a frail figure in white emerged, slowly, reverently, down the long, slick corridor of the Vatican courtyard. No entourage, no applause, no crowd to cheer or chant. Only the echo of raindrops striking stone. Pope Francis, alone. He walked with measured steps toward the empty plaza, toward the exposed Blessed Sacrament, gleaming beneath a canopy as heaven itself seemed to hold its breath. The scene felt unearthly. A shepherd without his flock. A city without its voice. A world suspended between panic and prayer. And yet, he stood. The camera panned slowly, capturing what words could never say. A soaked cassock. Eyes burdened not just by age, but by sorrow. Hands trembling slightly as he raised the monstrance high over the silent square, blessing not a gathered church, but a scattered world. He said nothing at first, because no words could compete with the moment. But when he spoke, his voice cracked but firm, he said this: "We are not alone." Those 4 words pierced through the fog, through the despair, through the walls of every quarantined soul watching across the globe. In that rain-drenched silence, he became more than Pope. He became mirror, intercessor, reminder that even in isolation, God had not turned away. The image would be etched in history, a man with one lung, aging, limping, facing the sky as storms rolled over the city of 7 hills. It was a prayer without posture, a sermon without words, a gospel of presence. There was no ceremony, no majesty, no pretense, just faith. That night, the city of Rome did not roar with liturgy. It whispered with repentance. And in the center of it all stood the last pope, not with might, but with mercy. In the darkest hour, he did not retreat into marble halls. He walked out into the rain and stood for us all. Long before he was ever called pope, Jorge Mario Bergoglio walked the back streets of Buenos Aires, not with guards, but with grocery bags. He shook the hands of Jews, Muslims, and atheists alike. He listened, he learned, and he remembered, because to him, faith was not a fortress. It was a bridge. That conviction followed him to the highest pulpit on earth, and nowhere was it clearer than when he left the comfort of Rome and walked into the heart of division, Iraq, a land torn by war, scarred by extremism, where ancient churches had become ruins and crosses lay buried in the dust. No pope had ever gone there, none had dared. But Francis did. He flew into a war zone, not behind armored glass, but with open arms. He met the survivors of ISIS, children who'd lost parents, priests who'd buried entire congregations, Muslim leaders who had wept in silence for their Christian neighbors. And in the ancient city of where Abraham, father of 3 great faiths, once walked, Pope Francis stood in the open air and proclaimed, "We are all brothers." His voice echoed through a land where religion had long been used as a sword. Now, it became balm. But Iraq was only the beginning. He sat face to face with the Grand Imam of Al-Azhar in Cairo, the most prominent voice in Sunni Islam. And together they signed the document on human fraternity, a declaration of peace, of mutual respect, of a shared future between Christians and Muslims. He wept beside rabbis at Auschwitz, his white robe soaked with the weight of history as he whispered prayers among ghosts. He stood on Greek islands, cradling refugee children, some Muslim, some Christian, all displaced. He entered synagogues and mosques. He embraced the Patriarch of Constantinople with the warmth of a brother. He met with the head of the Russian Orthodox Church in Cuba, the first meeting of its kind in nearly 1,000 years. Not once did he speak from above. He knelt. Not once did he demand allegiance. He offered understanding. And in doing so, he fulfilled what few had dared even dream. A church with open doors, not locked gates. Critics accused him of compromise, of watering down truth, of blurring lines that once divided cleanly. But to Francis, unity wasn't about politics or popularity. It was about people. He saw God's fingerprints in strangers, not threats. He believed dialogue was not betrayal. It was obedience to the Christ who broke bread with sinners, Samaritans, tax collectors, and zealots. He did not embrace other faiths to replace the gospel. He embraced them to live it. And in every handshake, every bowed head, every shared tear, Francis carried out the church's most difficult calling: to love without borders, to walk into enemy territory with empty hands and an open heart. The world called it diplomacy. He called it witness. And somewhere between synagogues, mosques, and cathedrals, the last pope became more than a pontiff. He became a bridge, a human echo of divine mercy, stretching across the great divide. The prophecy had one final line, one that hung heavier than all the rest. Not a symbol, not a riddle, but a sentence, as chilling as it was clear. And when these things have come to pass, the city of 7 hills shall be destroyed, and the dreadful judge shall judge his people. That city was not a metaphor. It was Rome, the eternal city, the heart of Christendom, the seat of saints, the keeper of relics, secrets, and succession. It has stood through empire, through martyrdom, through centuries of war and glory. It watched the Caesars fall and the cross rise. But now the whispers begin again, not of triumph, but of trembling. Storm clouds gather over the Tiber. Lightning splits the skies above St. Peter's Dome. And in the shadows of ancient basilicas, the statues of apostles seem to weep. Rome, the city built upon 7 hills, is no longer a beacon. It is a question. In Revelation chapter 17, it was written, "The 7 heads are 7 hills upon which the woman sits, arrayed in purple and scarlet, decked with gold and precious stones, holding a golden cup full of abominations." Many once believed that passage to be poetic, a metaphor of corruption. But today, it feels like a mirror. For centuries, theologians debated whether the woman was Rome itself. Some dismissed it as coincidence, others warned it was prophecy. Now, the line between scripture and current events is no longer theoretical. It's unfolding. The Vatican stands, but something has shifted. The unity it once held is fracturing. The moral clarity it once offered is clouded by scandal, silence, and confusion. The churches of Europe are empty. The youth are leaving. The flame flickers. And at the center of it all, the throne of Peter now stands unoccupied. The prophecy didn't speak of fire, war, or flood, though those may come. Its warning was deeper, more subtle, more terrifying. A spiritual collapse. What if Rome is not destroyed in a day, but dissolved over decades? What if its destruction is not of stone and smoke, but of soul and spirit? The rot of comfort, the corrosion of truth, the slow erosion of reverence in exchange for relevance. The prophecy never said the church would fall. It said Rome would, the institution, the empire, the city built on tradition, prestige, and power. And once Rome falls, it said, judgment will come, not just to those outside the walls, but to those within. And the dreadful judge shall judge his people. That judgment begins not in chaos, but in clarity. It begins when the mask is removed, and the church must look in the mirror. The question now is not if Rome shall fall, but how and who will rise in its place, because prophecy does not stop at the fall. It points toward what follows, and what follows is more terrifying than the collapse. The throne is empty, the seal is broken, and the city of 7 hills is trembling. The throne of Peter now stands in shadow. The final pope has departed, and with him the last name on the ancient list has faded into dust. But prophecy does not end with absence. It warns of what comes after. The scriptures speak of one who will rise, not with bloodshed, not with swords, but with charm, with a smile. He had 2 horns like a lamb, but spoke like a dragon. Revelation 13:11. This is the false prophet, the second beast, a man cloaked in holiness yet hollow within, a voice that mimics Christ, but preaches another gospel. And now, as Rome reels from the death of the last pope, he comes. There are no trumpets, no thunder, no grand processions, just a silent conclave, a vote, a white plume of smoke rising once again into the sky. The crowds rejoice. They see the robe, the cross, the gesture of blessing, but they do not see the eyes. Not yet. Inside the Sistine Chapel, he stands, newly chosen, basking in the applause of millions. But when he turns, the light catches something unnatural in his gaze. Still, empty, watching. He speaks softly. His words drip with humility and inclusion. He speaks of love, of peace, of unity. But hidden beneath his speech lies something else, a twisting of truth, a redefining of grace, a rewriting of God. He begins to change doctrine, subtly at first. He appeals to the world, not to the word. He speaks more to governments than to congregations. He draws crowds. Millions adore him. He is hailed as the most progressive, inclusive, visionary pope in history. But something is wrong. The Holy Spirit no longer burns through his words. The weight of heaven no longer backs his decrees. Those who discern, the quiet prophets, the praying remnant, begin to whisper warnings. And then, Revelation 13 is read again, not as prophecy, but as present tense. He performs great signs, even making fire come down from heaven to earth in front of people. And by the signs that it is allowed to perform, it deceives those who dwell on the earth. He speaks as though he brings light, but his words are shadow. He is not here to guard the flock. He is here to prepare the world for the beast. He aligns the church with the state. He pushes for a one-world faith, a diluted blend of creeds and cultures, stripped of truth and absolutes. Those who oppose him are mocked, silenced, branded as extremists. And yet he does not rage, he does not shout. He smiles, he holds a staff, but it does not guide. He opens his arms, but not to embrace. He builds unity, not for heaven, but for a throne that is coming. The dragon has found its voice, and it sounds like a shepherd. This is no longer speculation, no longer warning. The imposter is here. The list has ended. The line of popes, from Celestine to Francis, has been fulfilled. The prophecy, complete. Rome trembles. The throne is no longer guarded, and a shadow has stepped in where light once stood. But prophecy is not the end. It is a mirror, a warning, a torch passed to those who would still carry it through the dark. Because faith does not end with popes. Faith is not held in marble halls or sealed beneath ancient domes. Faith lives in the hidden places, in trembling hands lighting a candle at dawn, in whispered prayers from broken lips, in a mother's arms a soldier's cross, a weeping child in the back of a quiet church. And now, in the wake of deception, that faith must rise again. Not as dogma, not as tradition, but as flame. From the refugee camps of Sudan to the hidden house churches in China. From the ashes of Notre Dame to the cracked tiles of Jerusalem. From the underground tunnels in North Korea to the prisons in Iran. From the living rooms of the faithful in Lagos, Chicago, Manila, Sao Paulo, the fire begins to burn again. This is no longer the age of comfort. It is the age of clarity. The church is not a building. It is a body. And every member now holds the responsibility to stand. The false shepherd will speak, but so will the Spirit. The voice of the dragon may deceive many, but the whisper of Christ still calls those who listen. My sheep hear my voice, and they follow me. Now the lines are drawn, not between denominations, but between devotion and deception, between surface religion and surrendered hearts. And so, while Rome may fall and wolves may roam the sanctuary, there remains a remnant, a generation that will not be silenced, a people who will not kneel to lies, a church that may be bruised, but is not broken, Because somewhere, in a small room on a quiet night, a child is reading the Gospels, and her eyes widen with wonder. She doesn't care about prophecy charts or conclave politics. She just sees Jesus, and for her, the church begins again. Francis is gone. The prophecy is fulfilled. But the gospel, the true gospel, is still alive, and the gates of hell will not prevail. So rise, not in fear, not in fury, but in faith, because the dreadful judge will come. But so will the bridegroom, and those who have oil in their lamps, trimmed and burning, will not be left in the dark. Watch, therefore, for you know neither the day nor the hour. The last pope has passed. The church must now decide who it truly serves. Amen.